and welcome back to another Between the Pages book chat. And today we are talking about the book collection Dark Tides 8 Against the Clock. And we have as a guest one of the authors in that collection, uh, Mark Allan Gunnells. I hope I pronounced your name right.
That is correct. You
Okay,
got
and
it.
yeah, and his novella in Dark Tides 8 is called Septic.
Mhm.
And there are two other authors as well I'd like to mention before we start, Shane Nelson and Brandon Ford. Their books are subscription due in Pixelated or
Yeah,
Pixated.
pixelated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wrote that down wrong. Anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself, and then we'll go right into talking about the book.
Okay. My name is Mark Allan Gunnells. I'm a writer of horror and suspense. I've been publishing for a little over 10 years now. I've actually worked with Crystal Lake Publishing, who published this book several times. They're great to work with, and I'm always excited when they invite me to do something with them.
Yeah, they're a good publishing house. So, how did you get involved in the project?
Joe Meinhardt, who runs Crystal Lake Publishing, like I said, we had worked on several projects together in the past, and he sent me an email and said it was before they had launched this Dark Tide series, but he said, they're wanting to do it, and each one will have three novellas by three different authors, and they'll all be on a theme. And he asked me if I wanted to write something for the suspense and mystery theme. And it just so happened I had this idea in my head. I had even started to try to write it once about a year before and didn't get very far. But I thought this would be a great push for me to really get back to it because it was an idea that I was excited about. So I said absolutely yes, and immediately started writing my novella for him.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the book. What's it about?
Well, Septic is it's set in 1988, and it is about a high school student who um, a bunch of kids are meeting at the school during Christmas break to go be in the Christmas parade. Um, but he is feeling sick. He gets into the band building and goes to the bathroom, not realizing the lock is busted and he can't get back out of the bathroom. And everyone leaves him there. Um, but what he starts to realize is the sickness he feels, his appendix has actually burst. So that's created a ticking time clock on, is he going to be able to get out of that bathroom in time to get help? And it just sort of goes from there.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the main character. What's his personality like?
Well, he's a good kid. He is a smart kid. Um, he is a kid who is harboring some secrets because he's gay, and this is 1988, so not a lot of out gay teenagers at that time, and so he's sort of leading not really a double life because he is who he presents himself as, but he keeps a certain part of himself hidden even from his best friend. Um, and that was an important part of his character for me. But he's also a resourceful guy. He's a guy who doesn't give up. So when he gets in this situation, he's just constantly trying to come up with solutions on how to get himself out of here, how to get the help he needs. And I think that helps with the suspense because he's just, he tries one thing, it fails. He's immediately thinking of something else he can do to get himself out of this situation.
Yeah, I would expect there's a lot of psychological undercurrents in the novel as well, because he's kind of fighting against not only his own situation, but probably his own fear and other things as
Yeah.
that like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting when you write something. Um, I mean, there are parts of the novella that take place outside with the other people he knows, and are they going to figure out, there's something wrong and find him? But the sections with him in the bathroom, it's just him. It's just him by himself, and it gives you a chance to really go deep inside his mind because that's all he's got. He's just got himself and his thoughts and his fears, and yeah, that was actually a really interesting and fun part to write.
Okay, so what was the hardest part of the book that you had to write? Which scene or type of scene do you find difficult?
Um, Sometimes for me, getting it started is the hardest part. Deciding the best place to start the story, the best moment to really go into it. Um, and interestingly enough, the opening of the novella isn't the original opening. The original opening is still there. I just have a section before it now. So that's usually the hardest part because once I really get into it, then things really start to click, especially with a novella, because it's relatively compact, and in this one, relatively fast paced. So once I really got started, it just kind of flowed out of me. But it was probably the beginning, just finding the exact right moment to get into the story that was the most difficult for me.
Okay, so what was your favorite part of writing the story? What was your favorite scene or type of scene?
I think coming up with all the different possibilities of what he was going to do to try to get himself out of the situation, um, kind of putting myself in that mindset, and if I was in that situation, what are the things I would try. But surprisingly, I also really enjoyed the scenes that took place outside with the other people in his life, because it's kind of interesting to write characters who don't have all the information. They don't know exactly what's going on. So having them get these little clues that start to make them realize, that was a lot of fun. And particularly, the character has a best friend named Danny, who at the beginning seems like kind of a stereotypical 1980s jock bully character. But throughout the novella, he's revealed to have more depths and more layers. And that was a lot of fun to write too, to sort of flesh out what in a normal story like this might be a stereotypical character and show him to have greater dimensions.
Okay, so why did you pick the 1980s for the setting? I would assume that it's because, you wanted to put it before cell phones and
Well,
instant contact and that sort of thing, but
that is definitely a consideration, but also, interestingly enough, the genesis of the idea is rooted in a real incident. When I was in high school, there was, in this case, it was a young girl, a young woman. She met with some people at the school to go be in the Christmas parade, and she went into the band building to use the bathroom, and she got stuck in there, and they did leave her. Now, she was not sick, and she did manage to get herself out in just a couple of hours. But it was all the talk at the school when I got back from Christmas break, and that's always stayed with me. I've always remembered that because it was such an interesting little thing that happened. It took like 30 years though for me to suddenly realize, oh, there's like a story here. So I set it back in the 80s, one, because that's when the actual incident happened, but two, because if that incident had happened today, I do think, it would have been nothing. She would have just texted one of her friends and said, "Hey, I'm stuck in the bathroom. Come open the door." And also, even if you try to do something to disable that character's cell phone, other people are going to, in this day and age, other people are going to notice when a teenager is suddenly vanishes from social media and things like that. So that was definitely a consideration.
okay, so what other characters are in the book? Second, you mentioned Danny, his friend. Who else is involved in the story?
There is a character named Zach who is another student who has a little bit of a crush on Carl. Um, and he's the one who actually lets Carl into the band building to use the bathroom. And it's that crush on Carl and the concern about Carl that starts him thinking that, maybe there's something going on with Carl not being there when he's supposed to. Um, but Zach was a lot of fun to write. And then the other main character is actually Carl's mother, Sheila. Um, and she's a single mother working really hard to try to support her kid. Um, and she was planning to be at the Christmas parade to see him on his float, but got called into work, which also complicates things because now she's not there to see he's not on the float. Um, But those are the main. There's basically the main characters are those four: Carl, his mother Sheila, his friend Danny, and Zach, who has the crush on him.
Okay, so what are your characters afraid of?
Well, Zach and Carl have similar fears because they're both gay. They're both in the closet in a time when it's just almost unheard of for somebody to be out um, in high school. They have different coping techniques, though, because I wanted to do it from two different perspectives. Zach, who more mirrors myself at that time period, he is a sensitive, effeminate boy, so he's more obvious. He's the one people recognize the difference in, and therefore sometimes target him for harassment. Whereas Carl is popular and has a lot of friends, and in some ways he feels he has more to lose, so he is more interested in trying to pass. Um, but they both have those fears of, being found out. Uh, Danny, who because he does come off as kind of that, overly confident jock type, um, he has a lot of fears about people realizing, because he does have a sensitive side. He does have dreams beyond playing football. Um, but he doesn't tell many people besides his friend Carl, because he's afraid people will see that as weak and not manly. She's afraid of letting her son down. She's afraid of not being able to provide for him, not being able to give him the life that she wants him to have, because she's on her own and she's not working the most high paying job. Um, so her greatest fear is letting her son down.
It sounds like there's an undercurrent of vulnerability playing through the characters. Are there any other themes that run through the book?
Um, well, I mean, there is kind of a theme of don't give up. I mean, in the novella, it's very specific to the situation of him being trapped in the bathroom with the burst appendix. But I feel like that can be seen in a broader way of just keep going. If you try something and you don't succeed, try again. Try it in a different way. Um, I actually think that's just an important thing in life. So I think that is a theme in the novella. And there is also just a theme of with Zach and Carl both coming to the realization that they're okay, that what they're trying to hide isn't really shameful. What's shameful is that they live in a society that makes them feel like they have to hide it. And I work in the novella with both of them to get them to a place where it's not like suddenly they're going to be going into school waving a rainbow flag, but just for themselves, more of an acceptance and a peace with themselves.
Okay, so working with a lot of solitary character scenes, I would assume, did you have difficulty building the suspense or did you find it easier?
Um, I actually thought it wasn't that difficult because I felt like switching between the scenes actually helped ratchet up the suspense. Like I would get Carl to a place where he was just about to try something new, and then I could switch to Zach and deal with him gradually starting to realize something's wrong here. Maybe I should be trying to figure out what happened to Carl. And then I would switch to the mother and have a moment where she almost was going to be able to go to the parade where she would find out. And then something happened. So I actually felt all that switching between scenes actually helped me maintain the tension and the suspense.
Cool. So, which character would you like to hang out with in real life?
Um, oddly, I think I wouldn't mind hanging out with any of them. I mean, Zach and Carl are definitely probably my two favorite characters. But as I got more into the depth of the Danny character, and I didn't actually even necessarily know when I started all the layers I was going to give him that sort of developed. But I feel like at his core, he's a good guy. Um, and Carl's mother is just a hardworking straightforward woman. But I guess, Carl and Zach, I feel like we'd have a lot to talk
Okay, so you mentioned that you've written other books, so tell us a little bit about some of those.
I write a lot of horror and suspense. As I said, I've done several with Crystal Lake, a novel called Before He Wakes, which was another pure suspense-driven novel. Um, I've done kind of a supernatural-ish novella with them, When It Rains. I've done some collections with them, Flowers in a Dumpster and um, Bookhaven. Um, I I really love ghost stories. I've done a couple of those, 324 Abercorn and a haunted apartment novel called 2B. Um, and I love short fiction. I have actually several collections, but I've also worked outside the horror and suspense genres. Last year, I haven't had a novel out called The Advantaged, which is just kind of a queer coming of age story set on a college campus. And then I also had a very bizarre, um, almost fantastical horror novel out called Lucid, which was set almost entirely in dreams. So I kind of run the gamut, but I basically write whatever seems interesting to me at the time and what I think is gonna be the most fun.
Okay. So do you have any upcoming projects that you want to give a little sneak peek to?
Um, I don't have any dates for anything, but I have sold a collection to a relatively new publisher. It's going to be called Haunted Places and Other Stories. I'm excited about that. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of short fiction, so I'm always excited when I have a collection. I've submitted a novella to a publisher that I'm waiting to hear back, and another collection which I'm really hoping gets picked up because it has kind of a Bradbury feel, and I love the short stories of Ray Bradbury.
Oh,
So I'm waiting to hear on those as well. But the only one I've definitely sold is the collection Haunted Places, but I don't know when that's going to be out yet.
yeah. I'm another Bradbury fan, so I'm with you on especially his short stories. I love them. So yeah, I've done a couple of sort of Bradbury inspired things
Yeah.
myself. Anyway, so well, I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you
Mhm.
tell everyone where they can find you and your books.
Uh, I have an author page on Amazon. All my books are available there. I also have a blog that I update semi regularly, which is markgunnells.livejournal.com. On social media, I'm all over Facebook, Mark Allan Gunnells, Twitter, Mark A. Gunnells, and I'm also on Instagram as Make Reading Cool Again, where I just post pictures of the books I'm reading.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so I have the Dark Tides book listed in the description with the link if anyone wants to check it out. I also have little blurbs for each of the novellas that are in it. And I'd like to thank you for being the guest today, Mark. Your book
Thank
sounds
you.
fascinating, as does the rest of Dark Tide series. And so that's it for today. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and bye for now.